All right. If you've stuck with it this far, you should have largely working server. We've got some authentication. This time we're going to have a look at hooking up a database. It's not an ORM, but it's how we can work with some data and some cool stuff because we've got some strong typing in Dart that gets me most of the way there, and I don't long for an ORM. All right, so there's a couple of things I've done since we last had been around. So I had a little bit of a quick play. Out of the Mongo Dart dependency to the Mongo Dart package over here. I almost exclusively use Mongo these days. This will apply to any other database. Obviously, you'll have to find your own way, but it still works. Alfred does not care about what database you use, and in fact, this entire video is going to have nothing to do with Alfred. So anyway, but this is wiring up a backend database in Dart. It's another way of thinking about it. So, all right, cool. So there's a couple of little things that we need to do. Just want to make sure the still going right. Okay, so there's this other class over here. This is that I've been using for a while now, which is effectively my ORM. That's it. That's the whole thing, right there. What we do is we extend our other model classes. They are serializable JSON classes, like we made this user one over here in an earlier version. We extend it with this DB model class, and it allows us to do some basic database queries. So all we need to do is pass in a collection. We'll come back to this, but first let's actually hook up a database. All right, so what we want to do is we want to create a database service. So let's do that. So we create database. Call it whatever you want. I'm going to call it database. Cool. All right. So when we fire up the database, this will probably be a bit of a long tutorial again because I'll be doing a little bit as we go. What we want to do is we want to have an open command. Open. Actually, what we do want to do, how did we do this last time? We actually opened up a database and passed it in. Because we're going to be using MongoDB Atlas, and its connection string requires us to do an async command, and life is a whole lot easier if we just have a MongoDB database that was reliably where we need it to be. So let's import Mongo Dart. Cool. We will have final DB underscore DB. We don't want to access anything without running through this first. Create a constructor for the final fields. Yeah, you have to do that. All right. Database this.db. We'll do it this way. All right. Now we probably also want an open command or a connect command. So open will do. And yeah, that's I guess our database. Let's call it database service though, huh? Just so we know. Don't have any conflicts. So that's all good. Swing on over to here. Services, and we will have a database service. We need to add something in there. What are we going to do? Sometimes I hook it up over in where I usually initiate it. It's probably over here in the bin area. Yeah. So we would we connect first to the database here, then we'll pass it into our services, and then we'll have it there always. So this is a little bit roundabout. I'm sure there's an easier way to structure it, but let's just do it like this for the minute. Okay, so final DB equals DB, and actually it's db.create because we're going to be using a Mongo Atlas database. And I'm going to walk you through how to create an Atlas database with some permissions because that's also a little bit of a pain. So first things first, build database. We want to create a free one. So obviously I've gone to cloud.mongodb or MongoDB Atlas. They give you free Mongo databases. Cool, I can swing it in Sydney even. Free. Create a cluster. Oh, awesome. So username and password. This wasn't as easy as it was last time I did it. So we're going to do Alfred tests as the username and Alfred test as the password. And I'll copy that even, just make sure I haven't mistyped it. And this will be deleted before you guys come back to try and hook into it. So don't even worry. We want to connect from our local environment, but what we want to do is, I'm going to make it just exposed to everywhere. I think I might have a visitor and we've got some other stuff. I'll pause it for the second and we'll come back to it. I'll just add my current IP address. Finish and close. Cool, go to databases. Back in a sec. Okay, where were we? We were creating, that's right, Alfred test. Wait. We're creating a database, which, look, it looks like it's there. So click connect. We want to connect our application, and we can now use this. So let's create a database. That's our thing. Remember our password here was Alfred test. And since what it's actually created, it hasn't created the database. What it's created is a server. So it's a, an actual hosted database situation. So you've got to give it a name. In this case, we'll do Alfred test as well. Cool. So now we have, that's going to do that. We need to await this because it has to go and do a DNS call to go and get all the data. Now we've got the database. So what we will do, we will pass in here services, and we will have final B. Database. Yep. Database service. That's what we want. Oh, come on. Database service database. Create final. Definitely want to be saying what that is. And we make it required. Hop back on over to the server. No, not the server. Main services. And all services require a database. Now this is going to throw off our tests. Future DB. Oh no. It's a database service. And a database service requires DB. There we go. Okay, so that's that. It has ruined our tests, and we will need to sub out. Database. Actually, we probably can. Database service, and we want DB from MongoDB. Yep. I think we just typically would do that. We'll just do a empty con string. So this will break any sort of database connection that we have. All right, I'll call you back. Okay, so we're back. Anyway, yeah, sorry, get sidetracked every time. All right, so what have we got? This is actually a really good example right here of the reason why we use get it. It's a little bit of a side note. As you can see, basically we've managed to now sub out the environment at a really early level, kind of naturally, without having to go to any sort of crazy extremes. And the reason why we have this sort of the binary entrance file, which sets up the production environment or the operating environment, and then we have this one over here, which can set up the test environment. Anyway, cool, so there we are. I just checked again. As you can see, we can run the test, and the tests all passed, so we're all good. Cool. All right, so where are we at? So we've got our little database service. We're not actually doing anything yet with the database. I guess what we need to do here, this is an asynchronous call, and it's a future we're going to return, and we're going to go _db.open. That's basically what we need to do. In fact, we can just return it like that. Good, now it'll carry through. So we can open it up over here. We can do it as part of the service starting. So what are we going to do? We'd go services. Database.open. Cool, so let's create the database connection first, then we'll connect to the server, and then we'll start the server. We'll create the server and start the server. Awesome. Done. Now, what else do we need to do? So we've got that open, we've got a database. So we're going to go over here, and we've got this is my ORM bit, okay? So this extends out this DB model thing, and we're going to have a user, and we're going to create a user collection in Mongo, which is like a table for anyone not familiar with Mongo. Anyway, it's not too complex, but what we need to do is we head first of all over to the database service, and this is how we create our collection. So it's a DB collection. Collection. Come on, Mongo. What is it? Oh, there it is, DB collection. We want to call it users, and it's going to be a getter because we just want it to execute when this happens. So underscore DB dot collection, and we're going to call it users. And this way we have a strongly typed users collection. We don't need to worry about, using the strings and passing them throughout the app. So basically this is just a convenience method for us to get that. And it also means because we're on this service over here, we can do this. Now, it did just occur to me that this might actually break, and the reason why I might need to split out my database service, but let's have a go at this. All right, so what do we have here? We've got our users. We want to extend a user class with this DB model class. What we have to do is you have to pass in the DB model user, so it's actually passing in a reference to itself. And then we've got the user over here, and then we need to do a super, and we need to do services.database.users. Maybe we'll call that users collection, hey? Just to make it easier to understand. There we go. Now, this whole serialized class now will work like an ORM. Kind of magical. I can walk you through this. This code, this DB model code, it's going to be part of the code here. This could probably be split out to its own package at some point. It's not perfect. There's a couple little things. I really wish I could get this find stream, and find one to just be a little bit more streamlined, I suppose. There's probably a better way to do that, because at the moment there's some issues which we can get into. But anyway, ultimately it works. So what we want to do is we jump back over to our routes and user route, and we go here and we want to create a user. So let's do this. This is actually a little bit of Alfred. So first things first, we need to pass the body, which is an asynchronous call. So final body equals request.body as JSON map, because that's the way we're going to take it in. And we need to await that because it is a future. Yes. There we go. Cool. So we've got the body. Now what we want to do is we want to go user dot from JSON, and then we're going to go body. Cool. So now we've got our new user. And then to save that user to the database, we'll just go new user dot save. Done. That trigger bit is from another project, and we do not need that anymore. That's what I was saying. It's not ready yet to be a package. Pass through can actually go as well. From JSON to JSON. All right. There we go. Done. Okay. So, cool. So that's basically it. Now, what we probably want to do is when we get rid of you, get rid of you, get rid of you, get rid of services, DB model, we don't need you, user, don't need you, user service, don't need you, user route. Okay. So, create account. So we're saving the user. So probably want to await that. And then what we want to do is we want to return, because Alfred allows you to use your JSON serializable, classes. We can just return your user to the user. And that should work, should create a new user. We probably won't create account. I don't know. I guess the only other thing too is we're going to do from JSON, and then we're going to go, we want to set the password, because we're creating a password user. So we just want a body and then password, because that's going to hash the password and save the hashed password, not the unhashed password. Done. That's creating an account. Let's run a little test over here just to make sure it's all working, see what it's actually returning. It should create an account. That's going to be async. Cool. So we don't need a login response. Final create response. Dot post URL. Grab the whole thing, so I'll do this wrong. And what's it going to be? I think the server over here, create account. Okay. Create account. Done. Now, obviously we want to give it some data too. So body, what do we got? We got what, first name? Don't actually know that that's going to necessarily work. We probably want to see the JSON output of another user. Oh, here we go. That'll work for us. First name, we're going to go test2. Oh. Test2, last name is test2. Surname, test2@email.com, and the password we can just do, what is that? It's going to go test2. Pass. Now, that should create an account. Let's print the create response dot body, and we're going to expect create response dot status code to be 200. Let's see what happens. Might work. Cool, failed. They all failed. Should log in a user. Service is not registered. Register singleton. Services. We might break it over here too. Because let's see if that works. Nope. Services not registered. Forget to register. No, we did not forget to. DB user route test. You know what it is? Yeah, this was the problem that we are already hitting. This services over here, because we've got the database set up, we actually need to register it not within services, the database service. So, because we're hitting users first. All right, hang on, let me pause this because it's usually a little tricky to resolve, and we'll come back and fix it up. Okay, back. All right, a couple of things we had to do. First of all, we had to swap out the services and database. We couldn't do them in one hit. So there's now an extra database service, which is getting registered. So if we head on over to database, just like when I do the services, now you just call database directly. The reason for that was when we trying to initialize the user collection, and we're doing this user collection we're passing in, if all of the services weren't registered, or if the services was to do something like hitting user service, which was then getting a user, and then all of the stuff wasn't registered and it all needed to be done in order. So it's just one of those things. I have had to do that in the past, where I just make the database its own little world. Anyway, the tests are now passing with the exception of the last one. So now we're back to some actual logic problems as a result of adding the stuff. So basically it says null is not a subtype of string, a typecast. We can click on this. So we're passing in email as null. So we need to go back. User from JSON, user's root. So the body we're passing in, I suppose, is no good. The cool thing is it has, Alfred's caught this and sent a 500 error to the user. But what we do need to do in our test is set an email, which I would have thought we had done, but I guess we haven't done. No. Well, there you go. Email is... Oh, no, this is what we did. Test2 surname. Surname and email. And we'll get rid of you. and hopefully all should be well with the world. Nope. Now what's the problem? DB is in the wrong state. Cool. So it's trying to actually insert something into the DB. So what we can do is we can go database dot open. All right. I mean, you probably don't want to be doing this in unit tests, but this is a good way for us to do it without having to use any third-party tools. So before we tear down the database, we probably want to close it as well. So database dot close. Let's create a close function over on the database method. Future close, make it asynchronous, and it's just going to be calling db.close. And the reason we don't just pass it straight through to the DB is because this way we can make sure that if we're calling close, we can hook into another method, so it makes our code more maintainable in the future. Nope, now what? It probably can't close. Empty connections. Yeah, all right. Well, let's use the live database because that was the plan all along, I guess, wasn't it? All right, so let's just do that. So where's our test? So there, and then we need to create the database asynchronously, and it's create, and then DB. Sweet, let's go. Whoop, we're failing, we failed. Bad auth, authentication failed. Oh. We won't call it my first database though, we will just use test DB. So that way we at least got a different environment to when we're running the server live. Again, you probably want to set up these environment variables to handle this sort of stuff. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All tests passed. Done. Done and done. There we go. So we have just created a user, hooked it up to the DB. Where is this? It's all under users routes. Would have liked to have seen an ID from the user there. I thought we were going to get that ID back. Database, users route. That's right. I was fiddling around before and I set something up and then I unset it and then off we go. So there's a little bit of code over here. When we go to save, it doesn't actually know about updating or inserting a new one. If we've got an ID, well, we exist. If we don't have an ID, it must be new, so we create a new one. What we want to do though is we want to set the ID of the item to, ID equals result.document underscore ID. That's right, I did this to me as well. Receiver can be null. Document, so document can be null, map a string object. Okay. Result.document. If document is not equal null. Yeah, I guess this does think it can be null returning too, so there we are. All right, let's try that again. We should see an ID in the test this time, and that means we've got an actual user. No ID. Oh, that's the other thing. Okay, which is what I thought was our problem before. If you go check your generated users, there's no user to JSON. So what we have to do is we have to rerun the build runner so that it will regenerate the serialization stuff. Build runner, go. And we have an error. What is the problem? It's more specific. Meta. Oh, good fun. All right, we'll pause this. I think it's just going to be some sort of dependency conflict. Okay, so after having a quick look, It turned out that we had to bump that up to 2.15 for whatever reason. It was working before, wasn't working before. Now it is. Run pub upgrade. And the other thing too, because I got a warning about JSON annotation being too low a version, which is not allowed for fun. We've pushed that up as well. And that has made the build runner work so that we have that going on. Actually, terminal. Cool, so that's happened. Now if we jump over and check here, we now have an ID field, which is the key, so that now when we run our test, hopefully, I haven't checked this yet, should have an ID. That was a bit of fiddling around. Here we go, password. Oh, look, there we go. We have a Mongo ID. What's it? It's called, I can't remember the name. I use them all the time. Anyway, it's cool. We got a Mongo ID. So that's that. Okay, so going forward, cool. So now we've done it. We have now hooked up a database to the application. Where are we at? We've got services, user service, we've got a database, we've got user. We're basically using kind of like a little ORM. So yeah, I guess let's have a quick little demo of this ORM. So we've got create a new user.save. Now we have a new user object. We can do new user.delete. We can wipe the user. We can also do, this is that funny little thing I said with the find. We can use it to find more users and it will automatically convert into a list of users. We can find one user, give it a Mongo query. We can also find and return a stream instead of just returning a list, and we can iterate over them. Obviously, don't usually tend to pull out a user to do this. You would do something like user like this, but then at the moment with those find things, since null safety became a thing, it has made it a little bit painful to create a user to have to do some queries. So you would do user.list and then you would do .find, and then you could put a query in there and you could go like underscore ID, and I guess we've got our ID over here, and that'll return an actual user object traditionally, but now because we have the required options, so we have to do a first name, last name, and email. Typically what I would do is create a little shortcut thing over here that will just fill in dummy data. Actually, all we need to do is email, really, in this case of user. So we go email, and we go like that, and then it will work. We can do a query, and then we can return the users. We can manipulate them with that user. Then we can delete it. Whatever we want to do. There we go. User to find. Because it's a list. So user delete, for example. Anyway, that's that. The code for the DB model, which again has some of this stuff, is just included over here. Just jump on the source code and you can have a play around with it and use it like we've done. Cool. I'll just delete some of that stuff, and that's that video. The next one, what do we want to do? We want to do deployment. And I guess that's it, hey? There's everything else is just follow your nose. So yeah, look, I'll do a deployment one, which is going to be walking through the deployment right up. We'll chuck it on Google Cloud Run. Anyway, that'll be the next video.